Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. So today, here are my predictions for the NL Central. We are on our way to 400 subscribers, so if you are looking for more baseball insight, feel free to subscribe down below. If you like today's video, leave me a thumbs up. If not, leave me a thumbs down. And please, leave me a comment at the end, tell me what you think. Let's start off with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Even though Starling Marte went to the Diamondbacks, there are still a couple of decent pieces in that lineup. You have Josh Bell, Brian Reynolds. For the pitching, you have Joe Musgrove and Keon Kela. Overall, I still think this team is a few years away. I think they're going to finish with a 67 and 95 record, which would be good enough for last place. Moving on to fourth place, I have the Milwaukee Brewers. They still have one of the best players in the game in Christian Yelich, but they did lose a lot this offseason. They lost to Yasmani Grandal, Eric Thames, Mike Moustakas. They still have Brandon Woodruff at the top of that rotation, but they did lose Chase Anderson and Gio Gonzalez. They still have Josh Hader out in the bullpen, but overall, I think the pitching is going to take a bit of a step back this year. In the end, I think the Brewers just lost too much this past offseason. I think they're going to regress this year. They're going to finish with an 82 and 80 record, which will be good enough for fourth place. Moving on to third place, I have the Chicago Cubs. The Cubs really underperformed last year, but they did hire David Ross as their new manager, and they're hoping that will light a fire under this team. Look, that lineup is still going to be solid. You got Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, Kyle Schwarber, Javier Baez, and I think that starting rotation is going to be fine. Yu Darvish, John Lester, Kyle Hendricks, Jose Quintana. I think that's a solid group. But I do see the loss of Cole Hamels hurting them a smidge. Replacing him will be Tyler Chatwood. It'll be interesting to see what he can bring to the table this year. The bullpen, though, in my opinion, is a concern again. They definitely underperformed last year as a unit. They brought in Craig Kimbrell to be their closer last year. He didn't even start his season until late June, and he was just awful last year. This year, though, he will have a full spring training, and I think he's going to be better. But they did lose Steve Cishek and Brandon Kinsler. Those guys were really solid last year for the Cubs. They also lost Pedro Strop, and while he wasn't his normal effective self last year, that was a guy out in that bullpen who I think could still be pretty solid for them. Overall, I do see the Cubs playing a little better this year, but in the end, I still think they fall just a little short. They're going to finish with an 87 and 75 record, which will be good enough for third place. Moving on to second place, I have the St. Louis Cardinals. The Cardinals, for the most part, stood idle this past offseason. There are still some decent pieces in that lineup with Paul Goldschmidt, Paul DeJong, but with the loss of Marcell Ozuna, I could see that lineup taking a bit of a hit this year. And that lineup really wasn't all that great last year, so there's still a lot left to be desired here. But also, look out for Dylan Carlson. He's their top prospect. He's the number 17 prospect in all of baseball. He's a switch hitter, and he can just rake. I think it's possible you could see him this year, especially with the offense needing a little more juice. I absolutely could see him playing this year at some point with the Cardinals. But the pitching is where the Cardinals thrive. Jack Flaherty was awesome last year. McCullers was solid for the most part. And Dakota Hudson, even though he did have a pretty high walk rate of around 4.5 walks per 9 innings, this guy did do enough to earn 16 wins for the Cardinals last year. And look out for Carlos Martinez. He was their closer last year. He is transitioning to the starting rotation this year, however. It'll be interesting to see what he can offer as a starter this year. But if Carlos Martinez is going to the starting rotation, it'll be interesting to see how that bullpen performs this year. Recently, Andrew Miller has said that he's having a bit of a hard time feeling out his pitches, but I think overall he's going to be fine this year. Flamethrower Jordan Hicks will miss this entire season due to Tommy John surgery, but there are some other pieces in that bullpen that can be very productive. There's Giovanni Gallegos, Ryan Helsley, John Gant. Those guys could be really good this year. In the end, I think the Cardinals are going to be right there in the mix for first place in the division, but I think they're going to fall one game short. They're going to finish with an 88 and 74 record, which will be good enough for second place. And moving on to first place in the division, my 2020 NL Central champions are the Cincinnati Reds. This team had a fantastic offseason. They brought in Mike Moustakas, Nick Castellanos, Wade Miley, and Shogo Akiyama from Japan. The lineup as a whole struggled last year, but with the additions of Castellanos and Moustakas, I think this lineup is going to be a lot better. If Eugenio Suarez can continue his production from last year, if Aristides Aquino can be a little more patient at the plate, and if Joey Votto can have a bounce back year, this offense could be really solid. As for the pitching, I love this pitching staff. Luis Castillo was really good last year, and he was just nasty sometimes. Sonny Gray is really solid. They got Trevor Bauer last year at the trade deadline. If he can pitch more like the Trevor Bauer on the Indians last year, that is a really good top 3 in the rotation. And while the bullpen did struggle more in the second half last year, that unit is really good. If Pedro Strop can be fully healthy this year, I could see him having a good year with the Reds, and I think that bullpen is going to do really well. Overall, I think the Reds are going to win the NL Central by 1 game, finishing with a record of 89-73, and they will be your NL Central champions in 2020. But that's just my opinion. Tell me what you think down below in the comments. Who do you think will win the NL Central this year? If you like today's video, leave me a thumbs up. If not, leave me a thumbs down. And again, if you are looking for more baseball insight, feel free to subscribe down below. Have a great day today. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.